And then I would like to give a very warm welcome to Monica from Spain, who is giving a lecture to us here in Norway and on the internet. A lecture that I was privileged to see in Oxford on Oxenmoot 50 earlier this year. Yeah, but take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Vigard. My name is Monica Sanz-Rodiguez, and I have been studying Tolkien for more than 20 years right now. I have an MA in English philology, but I'm specialized in literature from the British Isles. And my main field of study is Tolkien. I've been also a member of the Tolkien Society and the Tolkien Society of Spain, Sociedad Tolkien Española, for more than 20 years. So first of all, I would like to thank Arthedain's president for contacting me to offer this presentation to my fellow Tolkien Dilly in Norway. I do not dare to wish you a good afternoon, lest Gandalf shows up and asks, "What do I mean with that?" and invites lots of hungry dwarfs for tea who tricked me into signing a contract, so I suddenly find myself riding a pony with a cloak too big for me and even without a pocket handkerchief. I would offer you today a presentation called Water Lilies Bringing, a Horrific Monster Hidden in Plain Sight. Please follow me in this quest where we'll look for a horrific monster, as the title says, which is hidden in plain sight in The Lord of the Rings. So, as Carl Jung formulates in this quote, mythological language is able to reflect in our fundamental mental images and to talk to us in a way that no other rhetorical form can do. Fairy stories' relationships with the purest emotions and feelings, from happiness to horror, makes them a powerful conductor that connects with our inmost part, no matter our age, cultural level, or even our location in the world. Tolkien himself was a great admirer of the narrative of fairy and mythological stories. In March the 8th, 1939, he offered a crucial lecture on the matter called On Fairy Stories. It was dedicated to Andrew Lang, one of the folklorists and compilers of fairy stories he knew the most, since he used to listen to and to read his Red Fairy book when he was a child. This lecture was also published and, along with The Monsters and the Critics, would be the most academically influential text by Tolkien. In the essay, we can find this bold statement about fairy tales. Fairyland, Faeri, where he calls it the perilous realm. We are too accustomed nowadays to the sugary and harmless image of fairyland, mostly due to the influence of Disney, but the original vision of this land was indeed full of pitfalls and dungeons. Tolkien applies this thought to his own works. Perhaps you might remember that in his tale Smith and Wood of Mayer, we find deeply disturbing and terrifying scenes. For example, when Tim is visiting Faeri and he sees the landing of the elven warriors. As Tolkien said in his lecture, this evil and fear are not tied to heaven nor hell, but to a more primeval and atavistic source that we can also find in The Lord of the Rings. As Tolkien writes in his 1955 letter to Molly Waldron, cannot people imagine things hostile to men and hobbits who prey on them without being in league with the devil? He's talking here about the Old Man Willow, one of those rara avis who does not obey to Morgoth or to Sauron. When the inquisitive readers face such characters, they cannot help but wonder who they are and who they serve. Tolkien provided an answer in his 1954 letter to Naomi Mitchinson. As a story, I think it is good that there should be a lot of things unexplained, especially if an explanation actually exists. And even in a mythical age, there must be some enigmas, as there always are. Following this affirmation, he mentions Tom Bombadil as an example. I know that lots of Tolkien fans and Tolkien readers wonder who Tom Bombadil is. Tolkien is telling us here that we do not have to wonder. He simply is. So we are looking for a hidden monster, a supernatural creature born to perform evil deeds, who is not serving Morgoth nor Sauron, the greater foes, and is an utter and total enigma. In order to find it, we must escape from the old man Willow, who is not in league with the devil, and follow old jolly Tom Bombadil, who is created as an enigma on purpose. Now I will test you, as I did at the Oxenwood. Let's see if any of you know how this poem follows up. Old Tom Bombadil, water lilies bringing, comes hopping home again. Can you hear him singing? Hey, come, merry doll, derry doll, and merry-o. Does anyone know how the following verse starts? It's quite difficult. So the next verse is Goldberry, Goldberry, merry yellow berry-o. Because we are going to talk about Goldberry. Many of you wonder why this crazy lecturer points out of Goldberry, calling her a monster. She is a kind, fair, and beaming woman, living in harmony with nature, loving her husband, serving meals of milk and cream and honeycomb, singing at sunrise, and doing so many adorable things. Well, I will try to rest my case so the veil is lifted from your eyes, and you will finally discover that under that beautiful shape, she is actually a flesh-eating monster. Goldberry is a pretty ancient character in Tolkien's literature. She appears in the poem The Adventures of Tom Bombadil that was originally published as early as February the 13th, 1934, at the Oxford Magazine, volume 52. Tolkien included Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings because he was already created and because he needed the hobbits to go through an early adventure before arriving to Bree. This is connected to the rites of passage of, for example, Vladimir Prob theory of the tales. They need to be mature. They need to face a peril in order to start this big adventure that they will face after they escape I have the name in Spanish in my tongue, the Barrow Whites. Okay. So including the poem in the book The Adventures of Tom Bombadil means that Tolkien introduced the rhymes into Hobbit lore, since all the pieces present there are extracted from the Red Book of Westmarch. In the two poems where he appears, Tolkien comments, Tom's raillery is turned in jest upon his friends, who treat it with amusement, tinged up with fear. I think, no. Okay, that's good. In one of the stanzas, we find that Goldberry, supposedly playful, grabs Tom by the beard and sinks him into the river. As you can see on the first stanza I have included there. There his beard dangled long down into the water. Up came Goldberry, the river woman's daughter, pulled Tom's hanging hair, in he went a wallowing, under the water lilies, bubbling and swallowing. The only way for Tom to save his life is to command her to go down, sleep again where the pools are shady, far below the willow roots, little water lady. This spell, in a different fashion, will be used by Tom for every foe he faces in the poem, the Old Man Willow, the Badger Folk, and the Barrow Wight, as well as in a different form in The Lord of the Rings, when he saves the hobbits from the Old Man Willow. He says, as if you remember, eat earth, dig deep, drink water, go to sleep. Bombadil is talking. That is to say, Tom has to use his special and peculiar magic in order to escape from certain death. Thus, Goldberry, whether she was playing or not, is in some way similar to the other creatures of the poem. He even sends the Barrow Wight to sleep like Old Man Willow, like young Goldberry and the Badger Folk in the Barrow. Coincidentally, the Barrow Wight is the only one among them who is, as Tolkien said, in league with the devil. But let us remember that the poem is far older than the story, tying his creature with Sauron. Later in the poem, the idea of Tom escaping death is reinforced with another stanza. None ever courted Tom in upland or in dingle. walking the forest paths or by the withy windle, or out on the lily pools in boat upon the water. And since this poem needs a happy ending, he catches Goldberry and marries her, leaving on the banks in the reeds the river woman sighing. Goldberry is associated with water in many ways. She is called the river woman's daughter. She lives in a pool full of water lilies until Bombadil catches her, and later Bombadil surrounds her with vessels full of water and those flowers. As Tareen Jane Taylor reminds us in her essay investigating the role and origin of Goldberry, her footsteps are described as like a stream falling, and her singing opens up pools and waters in the minds of the hobbits. And as Ruth Noel's book, The Mythology of Middle-earth, reflects, Goldberry's attire also recalls the water spirits of myth and legend. Her shoes are described as similar to fish's mail, recalling the scales of mermaids, and her dress, blue and green, shot with gold and silver, are watercolored. We can find spooky mythological creatures who share some features with the Goldberry from the poem, who pulls Tom's beard in order to drown him. We could talk about the Bookaboo or Bookadoo from Cornwall, the Scottish Yehusga, the Briton Mary Morgans, the Slavic Rusalkas, or the Greek Naiads and mermaids. Even Tolkien has some other water creatures in his legendarium, such as the Watcher in the Water or the mermaid-like Oarne. But those are not the monsters I am looking for. This gentleman with that impressive moustache is Andrew Lang. I have already mentioned him in this presentation. This Scottish writer was also a journalist, poet, Homer's translator, historian, and biographer, though for this presentation we are more interested in his work as fairy stories compiler. Tolkien was in contact with his compilations since childhood, and he mentioned the great fairy book stories as tales he knew and read when he was a child. Tolkien deeply respected his defense of myth as part of history. At Andrew Lang's Green Fairy book, we find a tale called King Koyata, of a Russian origin. In this story, King Koyata, who was unable to produce an heir, undertakes a long journey through his kingdom. On his way back, he feels a sudden and violent thirst for water, and he finds a crystalline pond where he plunges his head along with his astonishing long beard. But when he tries to stand again, something grabs firmly his beard and threatens to drown him. This malignant creature promises to let him go if he gives him the thing he will find in his palace that was not there when he left. And of course, as you may have already guessed, the queen had a child in absence of her husband, quite a familiar trope in fairy stories. Nevertheless, I intend to go further with my research. There is a creature of Slavic, German, and Northern origin which shares more characteristics with Goldberry than any creature mentioned earlier. Its name is Nokka, or more precisely, the name of its female counterpart is Nyx. So what's a Nokka? A Nokka is a mythological creature who lives under fresh water, be these rivers, streamlets, ponds, lakes, or even wells. They are regularly described as old men with long beards who live in solitude and are eager for human flesh. As a kind of counterpart, some of its feminine personifications, or nixes, are more sociable and friendly and keen on dancing and singing, although the majority of them cultivate the peculiar hobby of homicide and cannibalism. About these feminine counterparts of the Nokka, it is told that they have a captivating beauty. In the poem, when Tom is trapped by Goldberry, he cries, "There's the pretty maiden." It's also said that they comb their long golden hair as Goldberry, with her floating hair, thus in the poem, combed her tresses yellow. They charm men with their voices, and we see her singing to the birds in the poem and welcoming the hobbits with an enticing song in the novel. Finally, the benevolent ones frequently marry men. These two very elegant gentlemen are Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. Apart from being compilers of traditional folk tales, they are renowned for their linguistic research, reflected in their seminal etymological dictionary. Their book Children's and Household Tales was published at the end of 1812, and it brought them international renown and made their names immortal. Tolkien knew and admired Brothers Grimm, both for their folktale compilations and their linguistic works, as well for us their research to study and compile Teutonic mythology. They have mentioned too on the essay on fairy stories, both in the final version and the manuscripts preserved at the Bodleian Library in Oxford. Amongst the Grimm brothers' tales, we find Nixies playing malignant roles, slaving the unwary or dragging them under the water. In tale number 81, The Nix of the Mill Pond, which Andrew Lang would include in his Yellow Fairy book under the title The Nix, a miller makes a deal with a nix. She will give him wealth, and he will give her the first thing that's born in his home. He agrees, thinking of a puppy, a kitty, or a chick. But as you may have imagined now, the miller's wife had just given birth when he arrived home. In the tale number 79, The Water Nix, this creature enslaves two poor kids who fell on the well where she was living. She gives them then impossible tasks, such as fetching water in a bucket with a hole in it, or cutting down a tree with a blunt axe, in order to keep them at her service forever. But what is the crucial piece of this puzzle that makes me identify Goldberry with the knocker and no other creature? What's the clue, the final sign that straightforwardly points to this premise? I have hinted it in previous slides. You may have noticed it. There my pretty lady is, River Woman's daughter, slender as the willow one, clearer than the water. Old Tom Bombadil, water lilies bringing, comes hopping home again. Can you hear him singing? When the hobbits meet Tom Bombadil, he's carefully carrying on a large leaf as on a tray a small pile of white water lilies. Don't you crush my lilies, says Tom when he puts them on the floor. The first thing we meet of Goldberry is her voice, singing from the house, reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water, Old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. And the first thing we see of her is this image, and we contemplate her long yellow hair and a green dress with bits of dew, her waist surrounded by a belt of flag lilies, and surrounded by water lilies. Tom described what he was doing when he found the hobbits as, I had an errand there, gathering water lilies, green leaves and lilies wild to please my pretty lady. The last ere the years end, to keep them from the winter, to flower by her pretty feet till the snows are melted. These two references point out to Goldberry's need of these flowers until spring appears again and she will be able to bathe among the water lilies in the ponds. In the poem, it's also mentioned that Goldberry wore on her wedding with Tom forget-me-nots and flag lilies for garland. The Knocker use water lily ponds as their dwellings in order to use the flower both as covering and as bait for the prey. We can check it by looking at this fantastic painting by Theodor Kittelsen. Knocken wait under water lilies, and when a lover passes by and marvels at the flower, leaning over to collect it as a present for her lady, the knocker pulls from it, carrying the lover underwater to feast on him. This creature receives many names depending on the region where it's found, such as Nikur at the Faroe Islands or Nika on the Netherlands, all of them related to the Proto-Indo-European root neig, to wash or clean, given that they live underwater, and also to the concept of nude, naked, since many Nokken are naked and covered with the hair and or the beards in the legends. In Upper and Central Germany, they are called Hackermann, the one with the hook, since it is told that when the victim picks up the water lily, the monster will use a hook to trap and drown them. The Anglo-Saxon form of this name, Nicker, appears in Beowulf with the sense of water monster. Even Tolkien, in his Beowulf translation and commentary, analyzes one of its appearances. I have quoted it in the slides. I do not dare to read the words in Anglo-Saxon, though I have a friend who's a teacher of Anglo-Saxon in Oxford, and he sent me an audio, but I think I won't make them justice. I will let you know what it means. It was my lot with sword to slay 9 sea demons. This word can still be found in some place names, such as Nicklepit, a forest in East Yorkshire, where some deep, very deep pools can be found. Incidentally, it is said that one of the titles used to name Odin is Hjaldr Nikar, battle instigator, which is believed to be the origin of Old Nick, one of the names of the devil in English. Some of the forms mentioned earlier have been used later to name animals such as crocodiles or hippopotamus. In Sweden, water lilies are called nekrosväxter, and in Norway, please forgive me if I don't pronounce it right. Nakrosa, is it okay? Good. Both names meaning lily of the Nakke. The type of water lily that Goldberry wears as garland in the poem and as belt in the novel is called flag lily, and it grows in the river streams, blooming in astonishing crimson flowers. There is a Swedish tale explaining why the flag lilies of Tiveden forest have that color. And in the tale, we find none other than a Nocca. A brief version goes like this. There once was a poor fisherman who lived by the Fogeton lake among the trees of Tiveden. He had a beautiful daughter. The lake gave him little fish, so the fisherman barely provided for his small family. One day, while the fisherman was fishing in his small oak boat, he met the Nocca, who offered plenty of fish from that moment on if he gave him in exchange his daughter when she became of age. The desperate fisherman agreed. The day the girl came of age, she went down to the bank of the lake to meet the Nocca. He happily asked her to come with him to his underwater dwellings, but the girl unsheathed a knife and swore that he would never have her alive, stabbing herself in the heart and falling dead in the lake. Then her blood dyed the water lilies red, and since that day onward, most of the water lilies of the lake among the trees of Tiveden are red. Nowadays, Tiveden is a natural reserve, and the red water lilies that grow in the lake are protected, so it's forbidden to pick them. I suppose the Nocca has moved to another place where he can hunt. Maybe Goldberry's mother, the river woman, is none other than a Nix, or a Nocca, since they are natural shapeshifters, who tries to catch the unwary travelers walking through the old forest and still sighs sadly for her daughter. Maybe that is why Goldberry needs precisely water lilies and no other flower to feel a little at home at the house of Tom Bombadil. Maybe that is why Tom was on an errand to pick up the last water lilies of the season when he luckily heard the hobbits asking for help. And maybe that is why the hobbits find Goldberry like a water queen enthroned in the midst of a pool amidst vessels of earthenware full of floating water lilies. The reverence that Tolkien professed to fairy stories and his vast knowledge on the matter may have filtered drop by drop into his legendarium. Drop by drop, it formed a puddle, and from that puddle, a pool, and from that pool, a lake. And in spring, nurtured by the professor's imagination and his tireless quill, the surface bloomed in spectacular and delicate water lilies, tied with invisible strings to an ancient, dark, and atavistic monster. Thank you very much for your attention.